Welcome to the Dell'Oro Group AnalystTalks channel, where we talk about the latest telecom infrastructure market trends. My name is Jeff Heynen. I'm the analyst here for broadband access and home networking. And I want to take just a few minutes of your time today to go over some of the highlights from a white paper I recently wrote regarding the simultaneous shift that we're seeing now to 10 gigabit PON and fiber to the home networks, as well as open data center type architectures for those high-speed fiber networks. And I want to just let you know that you can download this white paper from our website, and you can also download it here in this dashboard. You'll see an attachments button down there at the bottom. You just click on that, and that will give you access to the white paper. So let's move to our first slide. So it's interesting that the shift to 10 gig is definitely well underway. For example, in China, we're consistently seeing XGPON1 and 10 gig EPON OLT port shipments really in the hundreds of thousands on a quarterly basis. And even outside of China now, in just about every area of the world, XGS-PON rollouts are quickly gathering steam among all tiers of operators. So the biggest driver for this shift, of course, is competition. In the US and other countries, we've seen cable operators continue to add subscribers at the expense of telcos and ISPs that haven't found an answer necessarily for DOCSIS 3.1 with their DSL networks or even first generation fiber networks. And so those MSOs are finally coalescing around a DOCSIS 4.0 strategy that also gives them the ability to deliver multi-gigabit services. And so for these ISPs and telcos, they need to have a long-term competitive solution. And this is also true in a growing number of European countries as well, where we're seeing privately funded ISPs continue to grow and making the decision to jump to 10 gig, and that puts pressure on some of the incumbent providers. Let's go to our next slide. At that same time as the shift to 10 gig, we're also seeing the introduction of more open, disaggregated architectures in broadband access networks. And so what started out in data centers and among hyperscale providers has moved to the mobile RAN, edge aggregation, and now fixed access networks. And so although we're still in that early phase of transition and adoption, there are a few general trends that we're starting to see. The first is that the standards defining these open networks have matured significantly. There's really general agreement now on the primary standards and how they should be implemented, even though there's still a lot of work being done to refine and optimize them. Ultimately, operators want to be able to scale their networks faster and make adjustments to those networks much faster than they've been able to before. As part of this white paper, I had an opportunity to speak to a number of major operators who are part of this transition, and collectively they represent about 70 million broadband subscribers. And so multiple times during my conversations with those operators, they mentioned the fact that Google and Facebook see thousands of changes to their networks a day, whether it's reallocating workloads to different servers, either based on geography or congestion, or whether virtual private cloud parameters can change, any number of factors, and they're just able to flexibly make those adjustments to their networks. And operators, they want that type of flexibility as well, and more importantly, they want to give their customers access to that flexibility and bill for it, just like those cloud providers do. So why are these large operators making these two major changes simultaneously? This is kind of the fundamental question at the heart of the white paper. And interestingly, all of the operators were pretty consistent with their responses to that question. Overall, the idea of spare capacity in their network was really the primary driver. And by spare capacity, the operators mentioned the additional bandwidth they're getting from these new technologies, and how that ultimately sets them up for the next decade for everything from traditional residential broadband to business services, mobile backhaul, to fixed mobile convergence, you name it. They all want that bandwidth flexibility to jump into those additional services when they're ready. And just as importantly, spare capacity in terms of the workloads per server and the flexibility to intelligently allocate those workloads based on application need or geography is also another important driver. And finally, the shift puts, and this was a really insightful comment, it finally puts technology ahead of marketing. You know, before, marketing would define a service, put together a business plan, and give the list of requirements to the technology group to implement. That the technology group would then work with the vendors, equipment vendors, software vendors to get those new features onto their product roadmaps. And then 12 to 18 months later, the service would be rolled out. And now with these type of open and disaggregated networks, the technology group can flip this model and provide the list of existing containerized services that are the building blocks for these services to the marketing group to then go ahead and build and define the service from there. You know, there are a lot of interesting trends and a lot of different things that I covered in the white paper, and there are far more details included in there. And I encourage you to download that white paper from our website. And certainly, I'd love to hear your feedback on the content. Thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it.